George from Ireland. So this video is about what happened just yesterday when a boat capsized in the English Channel, people crossing illegally from France to the United Kingdom, and 27 people drowned. Others were rescued, some are still injured. Anyway, this is the biggest loss of life in an illegal channel crossing since 2014, and um, even for legal crossings by ship, it's not since about 1988 when so many people drowned at the channel. Now, obviously, those people who drowned are deserving of human sympathy. I mean, any decent person, even they're completely against illegal immigration, say we don't want people to die attempting to cross the English Channel. So, what is to be done? Well, what's the background to the situation? So, a lot of people would like to come into the United Kingdom and claim asylum. Some people want to immigrate for economic reasons, and I suppose it could be both reasons why people want to come. So, the UK is a fairly wealthy country, about the 20th richest country in the world per capita GDP, and other reasons why people who've been crossing borders illegally would like to come to the UK. There are no compulsory ID cards because in France, where these people have been camping out, the police and the right say, stop, show me your ID card, prove that you have a right to be in France. Are you a European citizen or are you legally resident? If not, you can be arrested, taken to a detention centre, pursuant to being deported. Um, but there's this huge camp called Jungle Camp near Calais, and that's been there for about 20 years, where thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, of illegal immigrants have gathered, seeking to move to the United Kingdom. Something like 80% of them are said to want to move to the UK. Only about 12% want to remain in France. The others either not sure, possibly moving on to another country like Belgium. So the French government could close that down very easily, but they're choosing not to do so, partly because illegal immigrants are seen as a problem. Now, I'm not saying they're all bad. Were I in their situation, I'd probably illegally immigrate too. And I'm sure they persuade themselves it's a victimless crime. All we're doing is seeking a better life. And we would work in the United Kingdom, we'd contribute to it. Now, this touches on the whole immigration debate, and there are definitely good things about immigration. Every country can benefit from immigration, but it's right to acknowledge there are a few downsides. But the trouble is, if anybody says that immigration isn't an entirely splendorous thing, that person is screamed at as a racialist, which I'm definitely not. So no nationality is bad, no ethnicity is bad, but I do recognize that excessive immigration can be bad. So not to say that most of the immigrants are bad in themselves. We've got to formulate a sensible immigration policy and decide how many people do you want entering your country coming each year to coming to live or coming on short-term visas, and what skill sets they need, things like that, and check that they're desirable individuals. Why don't they want to stay in France? And that's well treated. Okay, might be that. I mean, partly because English language, that's the main foreign language in the world. People learnt that one. Easier for them in the UK than France. France got compulsory ID cards, can too easily be identified and deported. So many of got friends and relatives already in the United Kingdom. Now, is it because the UK is more generous with benefits or it's harder to be deported? Apparently, that's not really a factor. And the benefits for those who are seeking asylum are not high. Now, often when they get to the UK, they're often arrested, taken to a detention centre, protest. Who are you? What's your name? Where do you come from? What's your age? Trying to find out that sort of thing. And there'll be a hearing about whether they can be granted asylum or not. They can't be granted asylum. Okay, you can go out, you can live freely in the UK and work. But if not, then you have to be deported. You lose that, you can appeal. That takes a few months. If you lose that appeal, you can appeal again, and that takes a few months. But sometimes they're even despite they're granted exceptional leave to remain. So rather few of them are deported. It's a very lengthy process from arresting someone who's come illegally to actually deporting that person quite often takes a year. They'll say, are you willing to leave voluntarily? And they usually say no and string it out. Often they're offered resettlement packages, sometimes worth several £1,000s. We'll give you X amount to return to wherever it is, Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever they may have come from. And sometimes they take it because that's a considerable amount of money where they've come from. And also realizing that the streets of the United Kingdom are not paved with gold. I saw a very revealing documentary several years ago about some Indians who'd come illegally to the United Kingdom, living on the streets of Southall. That's this Indian Punjabi area of West London, and they realised that it's not true that everybody lives well in the UK, and some of them couldn't speak English. Obviously, many need to speak perfect English, don't have qualifications, can't work legally. There are huge penalties if you employ people in the UK who are in the UK illegally. So employers are very wary of employing someone who's illegal. So you've got to prove you've got the right to work in the United Kingdom. I don't want that £10,000 fine. Um, and just don't want the hassles being raided by the immigration authorities. So living on the streets, begging, unable to work, and then charities helping them out a little bit. Some people get to the UK without a passport, even though they've got one, because they don't want to be proved which country they're from. If we don't know which country you're from, where do we deport you to? We don't know. They might lie about the country that they are from to be allowed to stay. Or I saw people from some South Asian country in one documentary pretending to be Romanian. So they had people speaking Romanian to them, and they didn't understand a word, were just making noises, not saying Romanian words. Or ask very basic countries, how many countries, very basic questions to determine whether Romanian or not. How many countries border Romania? Couldn't say the number. Can you name any of those countries? And didn't know any. Because if they were Romanian, European citizens, this is pre-Brexit, they would have had the right to stay. Some people lying about their age, claiming to be minors when in fact they're adults, because minors are almost always allowed to stay. But I mean, it's highly irresponsible to cross the channel in something which is you don't know to be a seaworthy vessel. So some people are desperate to come. Favorite color, purple. So there's a better life to be had in the United Kingdom. What is to be done? So the UK and British government, so the UK and French government are discussing the issue. But Boris said something the French find disobliging. Now the French President Emmanuel Macron is refusing to speak to him. And remember, these people have often crossed many countries, come all the way from Afghanistan in some cases, crossed a dozen safe countries. If you really want to seek asylum, why not stay in the first country? But people have a right to seek asylum. And it is coming illegally if you enter a country without the right visa or any visa at all, or without a passport, or don't come through a legal port of entry, driving down a road, taking a train, flying to an airport, or taking a boat to a port or something like that. So they're search and rescue operations. And these people have often paid thousands of pounds to be smuggled. It's quite dangerous, can be sealed in lorries. Sometimes they run out of air. People have died. I think the UK should advertise in the countries that a lot of asylum seekers come from, like Syria, Afghanistan, China, Iraq, wherever it may be, saying, no, life isn't wonderful in the UK, and you're very foolish to try and come here illegally. You'll be selling yourself into slavery. In some cases, honestly, they've ended up in the UK in the hands of gang masters, had to work very long hours for working far below the minimum wage. That's completely illegal, obviously. Might be brutalized, and you may well die on the way. Boats capsizing, people suffocating when they're in the backs of trucks and stuff like that. So don't do it for your own safety. Don't do it. And when you get to the UK, you're not going to have a wonderful life if you're in the UK illegally. So you can be granted asylum or indefinite leave to remain, leave meaning permission to remain. Do you think they should set up an asylum desk in Calais? Well, I mean, that's maybe just going to try and make it easier to apply to the UK because it's difficult to process these people. I'm Irish, so they're obviously they're expensive. They put pressure on public services, but they can work in public services. Some can be teachers, nurses, doctors, dentists, could be police officers, civil servants could work in public services other ways. But this is why immigration needs to be controlled. I'm not saying no immigration, that'd be ludicrous. The United Kingdom, like every other country, needs immigration and indeed is gained from it. But you can have too much of a good thing. How much is too much is debatable. I don't know what the magic number is. And it's obviously not just a numbers game, is a question of the individuals. Is this person a good person who's got the requisite skill set to really contribute to the UK economy? Someone who's not dangerous or anything like that. This person could be good news. But even those who work in public services are obviously going to use public services. The UK's got 70 million people. It's a fairly crowded country. And of course, people who immigrate tend to come to the conurbations because these are the most ethnically diverse places. And these multi-ethnic, multi-religious, polylinguistic cities, these people often have friends and relatives and can find a home away from home. They feel their safety in numbers. So that makes the crowding even worse in London, Birmingham, Glasgow, Manchester, and so forth. And so that's why house prices are going up. There are other reasons, of course. Margaret Thatcher selling off council houses. allowing international investors to buy houses that they never live in. Boris Johnson was mayor of London years ago, said he's going to put a tax on empty homes. He never did. Perhaps overly restrictive planning laws, keeping the green belt, but I'd like to do that. So there are several reasons. Has anyone mistaken me for a semi-famous Liverpool comic, mimic and comic? No, curiously not. Who's that? Um, so they're like, obviously it's wrong to scapegoat immigrants, legal and illegal, for all Britain's uh, problems. And there are many other factors, but this is one. Most problems are multifactorial. And so there are only so many people that the United Kingdom can absorb. Prior to Brexit, there was a net 350,000 immigration into the United Kingdom. And then the Cameron government had said they want to get it down to net 100,000, so a goal that they never came close to achieving, despite Cameron knowing there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop people from European Union countries coming to the UK. Um, oh, sorry, Kevin O'Higgins, you love me, thanks. I answered your favorite question. My favorite color is purple. Anyway, so but he could, and only about half of the immigration came from the European Union, half was extra European. But then the figure fell after Brexit, and a lot of immigrants left the UK. Not always a desirable thing. They contributed and sometimes would be a real boon to the UK. It'd be good if they stayed. So you can immigrate legally, but that's difficult. Got to get the visa and have to prove you're earning, I think it's over £30,000. It's a real headache with paperwork for several months. If you work for a multinational company, they can transfer you. But anyway, that's a bit of hassle for them. Paperwork up to here costs them quite a bit, but they can do it. People who work for big corporations, banks, they get moved around to work in the United Kingdom for a few years, 5 years permanent residency. A year after that, you can get citizenship if you wish. But I think one way the UK is too harsh on this is on marrying a foreigner. Like one of my friends married a Chinese woman, and it took 6 months to get this China woman into the UK, several £1,000s, and took 5 years and several £1,000s more to get a permanent residency, bearing in mind that her husband's a barrister, so was actually very canny in knowing the rules and understanding the paperwork. So many forms to feel filled out. It's ludicrous. Shouldn't be such a bureaucratic paper chase. Until the 90s, if your spouse from anywhere in the world could come like that. Another point is your spouse and you have to be both over 21 when he or she comes. Not you get married, you might marry younger than that. Yes, I'm straight, Kevin. Um, anyway, this is a very difficult thing. Now, if people didn't cross the channel illegally, nobody would drown. So what's to be done? Some say, well, bring them all. We'll bring them all in safe ferries. But then the UK would have tens of thousands more of illegal immigrants to process, and there just aren't enough jobs or homes or anything for all these people. And I know there are empty homes in the United Kingdom, mostly in northeast England. If I would house people there, and not in the cities which are already most crowded, and some will say, oh, we don't want that. We want to live with our friends in London or wherever it is, like Gloucester. And I would say, well, no, you take what you're given, you'd be grateful for that. So anyway, so I mean, France and the United Kingdom need to cooperate on this, and this is an awful pity. But why did these illegal immigrants come to the UK rather than somewhere like Saudi Arabia? They're often come from Muslim countries. I suppose because Saudi Arabia is just so merciless to them, and they know they won't be allowed to stay. But I wonder whether they have to be cruel to be kind, because by taking so many illegal immigrants in and say, okay, you can have asylum, they might lodge bogus asylum claims that they're persecuted when they're not, claim to be a country that they're not from. Why deliberately don't have a passport so we can't prove where you're actually from. Um, or not speaking the right dialect, as in proves they're not from the country they claim to be. Um, but because they believe they'll be allowed in, more people come illegally, and therefore more people drown in the sea. And especially those coming across the Mediterranean, obviously not coming direct to the UK, going to Italy and Spain. That's sometimes the first leg of eventually getting to the UK. It might well be part of the business model of the people smugglers to think that they're going to be rescued, and we'll put them in a really unsafe boat. It's cyclical. $800 million worth of weapons in the Taliban, in the hands of the Taliban. Yeah, that's right. The one thing about the Taliban is it said these this American military equipment, they won't be able to operate because these things require an awful lot of maintenance and they don't have the know-how to do it. But there might be Pakistani technicians or even Chinese ones who do. So I suppose we just need to crack down on people smugglers. I mean, it's illegal, it's dangerous. And people say, well, seeking asylum is not a crime. I suppose it's not in itself, but crossing the borders is. you have to be in that country to claim asylum. Remember when Julian Assange wanted to claim asylum in lots of places, and the country said we won't even consider your claim because you're not in our country at this time. So yes, it's difficult to balance firmness with compassion. There are people who say open the borders, which I think is a completely wrong-headed and impractical policy. Remember, Evan Harris, the MP for Oxford West and Abingdon, said seeking asylum is not a crime, so they shouldn't be locked up in detention centres while this claim is processed. But then there'd be so many people, the UK would lose control of them, and if they lost their case, the UK wouldn't be able to find them to expel them. The system has almost collapsed several times. In the 90s, the UK was so behind they just declared an amnesty; they could all stay. But that was quite short-sighted and made it even worse. A bit like Reagan did the same in the early 80s. That was for illegal immigrants as opposed to asylum seekers. Immigrating illegally, some people don't claim to be seeking asylum or refugee status, just working illegally, seeing if they can just not be caught. The USA is abundant of jobs now. Those big anti-immigrants workers wanted all kinds of businesses. I see. Well, I mean, there are some unemployed Americans, and what's another solution? Is not have so people go to university. In the UK, about 55% of young people going to university, even if they've got terrible A levels. A levels too easy. So what a waste of time and waste of money. And all these fees. Initially, the fees are paid by the government. Then you have to pay it back in the United Kingdom, or at least in England. I'm not quite sure in the rest of the UK. And it's estimated that a third of those fees will never be repaid. So we shouldn't have so many people doing Mickey Mouse courses and have more young people doing these jobs, often seen as menial jobs, low-paid jobs. But so what? And make people really strive to be in university and don't make a degree so déclassé by sending huge cohorts of people, some of whom are not academically able to waste their time doing these courses which don't really enhance their employability. So it's also very perilous to cross the English Channel because it's one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth, and your boat might well be hit by a ship or something like that. People can die of exposure, die of hypothermia. Um, so I wish that nobody would cross illegally. Well, because it's a crime. I mean, I know it's not a heinous crime, but people should obey the law. And I know people aren't perfect on this usually. It'd be good if the problems that cause people to seek asylum weren't there in the first place. There weren't these tyrannies or civil wars, or there wasn't such poverty in some parts of the world. And if people have come to the UK and been illegally for a long time, there's got to be some sort of forgiveness. How long should they have to be in the UK before we let them stay anyway? 7 years or 20 years or whatever. So obviously, seeking asylum and immigration overlap. But allowing illegal immigrants to stay is unfair on those who've come the right way, who've gone through that rigmarole of applying and being accepted. Anyway, so that's my penny's worth in it. Don't want to sound the alarm, or certainly don't want to stoke any racialist sentiment, but just have a manageable immigration policy. And if you've got any immigration policy at all, that means you don't let everybody in. There are some limits, and that means those who are there illegally have to be sent home. Otherwise, you lose control of it, and you have people who shouldn't be there. A few of them be bad people. Don't think most illegal immigrants are bad people. And there's more pressure on jobs. It's the laws of supply and demand, and there'll be wage compression. They're taking our jobs, as sometimes said, whether they're legal or illegal. As I say, illegal immigrants find it very difficult to work. And legal immigrants, sometimes they do take British people's jobs, which doesn't reflect badly on them. They're doing what they're legally entitled to do. And what's the other thing is they are doing it better, or doing it for a lower wage or something like that. But the UK, how many new people should it absorb each year? 350,000 wasn't enough people, some people said. 500,000? You think 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million? People say you're scaremongering. People like Nick Clegg would there that say that. So, Nick Clegg, so what is the upper limit? Tell me, there's got to be some upper limit. Maybe it shouldn't be 350,000, maybe it should be higher. But eventually it's too much. You can have too much of a good thing. There we go. That's what I think. I want some moderate, sensible immigration policy. Yes, immigration, but be a little bit choosy about it. The one way I'd be more lax, actually, is to deal with foreign spouses. Or people from EU countries coming to study. I would say no visa, just come. You can come for your course of study, stay for a few months afterwards, do some hours work whilst you're studying. If you want to do paid work, people coming from short performances, conferences, business meetings, even to be paid, saying you can do 30 days a year of that or something, including your technical and support staff. or EU people, for instance, say, okay, you want to work as a doctor, nurse, teacher, something like that, these shortage professions, you can come so long as you only work in that sector, your spouse and children as well, something like that. Anyway, so I hope you found this somewhat informative and thought-provoking. So please donate with the greatest liberality to me on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. That's GeorgeCallahan79 79 at gmail.com. Toodaloo.